Welcome, everybody. Thank you for being here. I'm Adam Tell. I'm the Assistant Secretary of the Army for Civil Works. I'm the senior administration official responsible for overseeing the policy, budget, and operations of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers Civil Works mission. I'm excited to be here today in Alaska, back in Alaska. It's a beautiful day today to be here. We spent yesterday on the Mendenhall River, over the Mendenhall Lake, over Suicide Basin, checking out Mendenhall Glacier and Suicide Glacier. One of the best parts of what we have assembled here today is here with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, we have all four levels of our organization represented here. There's literally no one within the Corps who's not represented here in Juneau today. General Kelly from headquarters and Tom from headquarters, General Getz from Pacific Ocean Division in Honolulu that covers the entire Pacific Ocean region for us. And then, of course, Colonel Palazzini from here in Alaska District. We're here today because we wanted to make sure that we are in tight, close communication with the local government here, the tribe, ahead of the 2026 glacial outburst flood that we expect. This is something that when I was a nominee for this position, going through Senate confirmation, Senator Sullivan called me into his office, and he very effectively impressed upon me the criticality of this issue to this community, and that he expected me when I'm in this position to do everything in my power under President Trump's leadership to mitigate against this threat. From the very beginning, every time I've spoken about this publicly, including in a public hearing in September and most recently in a public hearing last month, I've said we have to look at this short term, medium term, and long term. And I've consistently conveyed that from the very first time I've ever spoken about this issue until now, short term, medium, and long term. And we've had an outstanding discussion this morning with our Senate offices represented here, Senator Murkowski, Senator Sullivan, local community leaders, and then all four levels of our Corps of Engineers organization to make sure that we're all on the same page in terms of what we're doing to address this challenge. And so we'll get into some of that as the questions come. But that's really the reason we're here. The reason we're spending all week in Alaska because Alaska is so important to President Trump, and it's important to me, and I love coming here, and we're really glad to be here. So we're committed to not just looking at long-term solutions to the Mendenhall Glacial Outburst Challenge, but also doing everything in our power. We're bringing national level capabilities to bear for this year, and we're going to build upon that next year and continuing to buy down risk for this community. Thank you.
All right, with that, Alex, first question.
Alex Solomon, KTOO. Thank you so much for being here in person. We really appreciate the face-to-face opportunity. At that Senate Committee on Environment and Public Works hearing in February, Lieutenant General Graham said that the Army Corps wants to look for an intermediate solution. You just mentioned a medium-term solution. And he implied that the HESCA barriers could fail before a long-term solution is in place. Where is the Corps at with this so-called intermediate or medium-term solution? What are the options? And how soon could one of those ideas protect the valley?
Thanks for the question. And General Graham's right. Intermediate, medium, whatever you want to call it. It is the medium that we're talking about here. The HESCO barriers that are in place today, they did work last August, and we're very proud of that. But it's at the same time, we know that we have to do more because we may not get as lucky this August as we got last August in terms of how the floodwaters behaved. We're working today for 2026 to lengthen the areas of the community that the barriers protect, to raise the height for just a few inches of height. Raising the height, we can buy down significant risk for the community, increase our chances of them not overtopping. We're doing work to analyze if there's work we can do in the channel or around the channel itself, whether that's hardening it, dealing with some of the debris in the channel, or whether that's changing the shape of the channel to some degree. Those are all things we're looking at in the short term. In the medium term, we're looking at more permanent and more survivable barriers that could be implemented, as well as continuing to look at potential channel modifications. Those are all on the table for the short and medium term. We're obviously continuing to look at long-term options that will require significant technical analysis and engineering. We're getting down that path. Every single day, we're learning more and more about this. We're going to have a better and better understanding of how to tackle this challenge in the long term. But in my view, we can't wait a decade to deliver, or 6 years or 15 years. We can't wait that long to deliver results for the citizens of this community. And so we're tackling short and medium with the same aggression that we're tackling long.
Follow?
A brief follow-up, yeah. When you described changing the channel in some way, are you meaning something like dredging to make it deeper, or cutting a side channel through the floodplain, or something like that? Is that the idea?
Well, I think everything's on the table. Sedimentation can be an inhibitor to the ability of floodwaters to evacuate the system quickly. To the degree that that's an option, it's something that we're looking at. But I think we're also, I think there's been conversation within the community for years about straightening the channel. This could be done relatively quickly and for low cost. The question is, does that straightening actually just move the risk to a different part of the community? And so we want to be very careful about that. We've got extensive modeling underway right now. We pretty well understand the north half of the channel. Our modeling is still making its way downriver. And we're going to understand more and more about that in the coming weeks. This is this modeling is going to take place over the course of the next several weeks. The city has its own models that are high quality. And one of the things we discussed earlier was making sure that our data and our analysis is merged with the city's analysis so that we can have the best product that we all agree on from an engineering perspective to help the citizens of Juneau.
Thank you, Alex. Becky Borer, Associated Press.
Secretary, when you were talking about the long-term options, and we see up here reference to the lake tap, and that's something that people in the community have been talking about. In other parts of the world where communities are at risk from this kind of flooding, are there any examples of something comparable where the Corps can learn from what's happened, what hasn't worked, and can you talk about some of the challenges that could be associated with that, with something so dynamic as the Mendenhall Glacier that's changing constantly?
Yeah, I may let some of our folks who've analyzed this on the technical level give you, I know there are examples that we've looked to around the world. This is not something that has been done extensively by humanity around the world. There are a few places where we can learn, but nothing, this is a unique challenge. I would just say a glacial outburst flooding is a unique challenge here in Juneau. This phenomenon that we have here is unique to the Corps of Engineers' entire portfolio. And so it's not like we have other places where we're trying to solve the same problem. Then we can learn from those and apply it here. This is unique to this place. And I think with that uniqueness comes a lot of uncertainty from an engineering and technical perspective. And we're trying to really reduce that uncertainty as fast as we can. And I'll turn it to maybe you, Colonel Palazzini, to address the analysis that's taken place in relation to other places, and maybe you can talk more about that uncertainty and what work we have to do there.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. So, we've got some of our best technical experts, both in the Alaska District, but really all throughout the Army Corps of Engineers, studying all the range of long-term solutions. You asked specifically about the lake tap and the tunnel. We'll look throughout the world. We partner with some of our partners in the AE community, the architecture engineer community. They bring in experts, and they'll survey all the places that have used tunnels like this. There aren't that many, like the Secretary said, and so we do have to do some significant analysis to make sure we're not adding uncertainty to the system.
Becky, did you have a follow-up?
And just to clarify, even though there's been discussion around that, has that been settled on in any way as the long-term solution, or is that just an option in a big universe of options right now for a long-term solution?
I'll let others add. It is an option in a big universe of options, but it's based on what we've done to date. It is probably for a long-term solution. If you're looking to solve this problem over the course of 10 or more years, it's at this moment appears to be the most viable technically. But that doesn't mean that the other other options are off the table. It also doesn't mean we're taking our eye off the ball in the short and medium term as we better understand this. Does anybody want to add anything to what I just said? Hearing none.
Nathan Espandula, online.
No, thank you though.
All right, thank you, Nathan. Mark Sabatini, Juneau Independent.
Thanks. Going off what you just said on the lake tap, as that board said, in December it was the preferred solution. Then a month ago, the city manager said, we just got a big surprise, and they've pulled back on that. And now you're saying it seems to be the most viable option. So the obvious question is, okay, what happened as of a month ago that resulted in a change of direction? What has happened in the months since that now has that back as the most viable option?
I would say nothing has changed. Nothing has changed other than the reporting. We've been consistent from the very beginning, short, medium, and long. And part of our analysis of the long-term options is engagement with the public. And I think I wasn't here for that meeting, but I understand it was expressed, what I just expressed, that this was the most viable option. I don't know that that's changed, but I will say what has changed is that I've turned my focus as our engineers reduce that uncertainty from a technical perspective. I've turned my focus to ensuring we're doing everything we can right now to protect the citizens of Juneau through short and medium term strategies. I mentioned we're expanding the HESCO barriers, we're raising the HESCO barriers, we're looking at the channel. We've got a significant portion of our national inventory of pumps headed this way today to get ready for the summer. So go ahead.
30%.
30% of our national inventory of pumps are headed this way. So just because I've shifted my attention to really look at what's in front of us right now doesn't mean that anything has changed in terms of the long term. Mark.
If I can ask a brief follow-up. I guess what I'm looking for, and I guess would help folks here in Juneau to understand, is the city manager, when this was announced a month ago, it was, this is a quote, it was a really disheartening pivot that left us a little bit speechless, basically saying that it looked like they were, putting this lake tap on as a long-term thing, and now seems like they're moving in other directions. That left a real clear impression with folks of what is going on. So how would you respond to that specific
I would leave it to
statement?
the city manager to clarify his or her position. That
was an inaccurate characterization?
I would say our position has been the same as long as I've been in this role. We're focused on short, medium, and long, and we still are.
That's one of the reasons we appreciate Secretary and the generals and the colonel for coming here face to face. There's not going to be a miscommunication problem at all, so we appreciate that, and we appreciate their enthusiasm and dedication to a short, medium, and long-term solution. And I'll let President Peterson give his analogy, because that was a really good analogy.
Well, thank you very much, Madam Mayor. One, again, I want to publicly thank the Secretary and the generals and colonel and all the staff for being here. This has been an incredible anxiety-inducing deal for the whole community. I myself, as the mayor, we both live out in the valley. We're in that area, not as deeply affected, but right on the edge. The HESCO barriers are exactly what needed to happen. They showed they worked, but they also showed they were just a triage method, right? And right now, the valley and the glacier is the patient. We're trying to make sure we come together. We had a charrette last year. We came together all unanimously on an enduring solution. But in the meantime, they have to do their job and look at all solutions. And I think that might have been where the miscommunication came in. It wasn't pivoting away from this, but the messaging was, we're doing our due diligence to look at everything. Because as the Secretary said so well, there's very few examples of where this has worked, and we've all looked into them. I don't know about you all now. I'm an expert thanks to Google. I've been, but honestly, we have to turn to them. And this meeting was that opportunity for us to understand where we were at. And the Secretary has been very clear throughout this whole meeting, and I just say again, Chi Shawa for that. And stating that we've not deviated. This is a priority of the administration. It's been a priority of Senator Sullivan and Murkowski. And, he got hammered on his interviews when he was getting, confirmed about this. And he's made this, and I very much, to me, it's always about who shows up. That's how I judge a measure of a person. And the Corps has incredibly showed up as our partner in this, as well as, the city and the tribe have been working diligently to make sure we're doing our end on the politicking side and lobbying side. But, unfortunately, things do get misconstrued at time, and this today was an opportunity to come back, reconfirm where we're at, that we are, in fact, all on the same page, which is over and over repeated today. And we're going to make sure that, the Secretary asked, where do you want our priorities, short, long term, or medium, long? And I said, all of it, right? The mayor and I were both very strong on that.
This meeting is being recorded.
That's good.
We want to make sure that we're looking at everything because, we have to triage the patient to get it through surgery, right? And the surgery is the long term, but we're working on all these short term. And I don't know if all of you walked the HESCOs last year. The mayor and I walked the very day of the flood. There are places, the tree got through by the Diamond Park field house. My favorite was the general. We were like, Senator Sullivan asked him, I thought these were supposed to withstand grenades. And he goes, well, that was a missile, and it was. But they did hold. But we saw places where you could see the water line literally this far from the top. We saw how vulnerable. So we got to do a better job of triaging now for this short term so we can get to the enduring solution.
President, if I could, the theory of the case for me from headquarters in my capacity as Deputy Commanding General for Civil Works and Emergency Operations is solve complex problems and help people. This is indeed a complex challenge, and there exists no daylight in our commitment to help. Our chief, Lieutenant General Butch Graham, insists that we get the engineering right, we get the project management right, and we get the business right. Our focus there, and you've heard the Secretary be emphatic about what we're doing today, what we're going to do tomorrow, and well into the future. And I think that the preferred alternative that was discussed during the charrette, there's a degree of design maturation that I'm going to insist upon, that I make sure that the technicality truths, those technical truths of this solution, we understand that. And so some of the modeling that Mr. Tell referenced, the science that we know is possible, many in this community specialize, those at mine, in the science that will permit. We've got to understand the conveyance of water. We've got to understand what risk we've already brought down in solutions that we're going to offer and work on this summer. We're going to do things that make next summer better, and we're mindful of the clock that this community is under, but there's absolutely no daylight in our commitment to get the engineering right, get the project management right, and get the business right of making sure that we're able to offer a viable solution. And I think today, the presence of all of those that will play a role under the Secretary's leadership and his commitment, I think there's absolutely no doubt there. We are all working toward solving this complex problem, and I think that what we're going to do this summer, based on what we've learned last summer and actions we'll take, will certainly do that to improve the safety and resiliency of this community.
Thank you. The concludes our first round. Probably need to do time check after the second round here because we do have flights. Alex.
Thank you so much. So what I understood from that committee hearing on February 25th was that instead of forging ahead with this lake tap solution, you're still looking at all the options. That was what I understood. And that now there might be a different timeline, but I don't know what that timeline is. So are we still expecting a draft technical report in May? Will the lake tap solution be the thing that's assessed in that draft technical report in May? Or is there a different timeline that we're working with?
I'm not going to get ahead of what the technical report, what the contents are going to be, because it is still under development and being refined. I will just say we have not taken any options off the table, and we're going to continuously assess all of the options. Like I said, this is a unique challenge. It doesn't mean that we may not we may very well focus around one particular solution for the long term. But I think the uncertainty that we're trying to drive out of the system will inform how that goes going forward.
So I'm trying to nail down if the thing that has changed is the timeline. I understand that you guys are still committed. Is there a change in the timeline for a long-term solution? Because what had happened in December with the charrette, it seemed like you guys were expediting. And now that's maybe the thing that's shifted.
No, I don't think the timeline's changed at any point. I think people have their own estimates. On February 23rd, we rolled out a set of initiatives called Building Infrastructure, Not Paperwork. This is nationwide. This is to reimagine and reset how the Corps of Engineers delivers for the American people. It takes far too long and it costs far too much. This is true nationwide. I mean, we have a challenge in that the Corps of Engineers, the greatest civil engineering entity ever devised by humanity, the organization that dug the Panama Canal, the organization that helped our nation expand westward, the organization that built the Pentagon in 16 months. That seems like like ancient history, and I'm trying to make that true again today. That's true nationwide. And so as we talk about timelines, we have to be clear-eyed about where we are as an organization and our ability to deliver quickly. And I'm committed to fixing that nationwide, but in terms of timeline, nothing has changed about our timeline. It's just I think what you're getting at is just different people have different opinions about how long these things might take.
What's your opinion?
My opinion is that whatever the long-term solution is far too long. It's beyond this summer, and I want to be focused on this summer. And so we're doing both. We're focusing on the long term while also delivering in the short and medium term. We can do all three of those things, which is exactly what we all coalesced around today.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. Becky Borer, Associated Press.
Secretary, speaking about this summer then, when you talked earlier about expanding and raising the Tesco barriers and having pumps heading this way, can you describe then, maybe provide more detail around how expanded, like how many additional miles we'll have of barriers, what the height is going to be, like what is different this summer, anticipating maybe something worse than we saw last year in terms of the flood?
Yeah, we're our understanding of the best guess the engineers have given us is that this year's event will look a lot like last year's event. It could be worse, but all of this is all just probabilities. We're trying to understand, we're trying to make predictions, but they're really based on probabilities, not necessarily some scientific evidence. I know that the precipitation that we've seen this winter has been significant here, and that certainly is going to go into the way we formulate this. I mean, it was snowing on us yesterday, so that's going to go into our calculus going forward. But what we do know is that raising the HESCO barriers, even by a few inches, may result in 5x protection for the community. So a small investment in the height can make the chances of overtopping 5 times smaller. In terms of the miles, the lateral miles, I'll defer to Colonel Palazzini.
Yeah, thanks, sir. So we've been working to prepare for 2026 GLOF since the last day of 2025 GLOF. And so working closely with CBJ, I think the community has heard phase 1 and phase 2 of those HESCO barriers. Phase one was in place and performed very well last year, and now we're on to phase 2. And so just as the Secretary said, raising phase 1, we're partnering with CBJ on that 1 to 2 feet. To raise phase 1. Phase 2 is the lengthening of the system, so to protect more people, protect more infrastructure. So that adds about 4 to 4.5 miles to the system. We're talking both sides of the river, and so it's not necessarily the full north to south length, but in total, another 4.5 miles of HESCO barrier. And so that's all part of strengthening the system. There's more armoring going in along the banks, along the shoreline. So those big rocks, that riprap that you see along the shoreline, more of that to make a continuous armored bank throughout the system. And then as we bring in pumps, as we bring in experts from the Army Corps to help CBJ think about flood fighting this year and what you do in the event that maybe some water does get on the other side of the HESCOs, how best to respond to that. We're all in as an enterprise and committed to working with CBJ to prepare for 2026. And then just like last year, after the 2026 GLOF, we'll be immediately preparing for 2027 and strengthening the system and staying your partners in responding to these flood events.
That's right. Absolutely.
Related to the long-term solution, and I'm not trying to be glib, so I apologize if it comes off that way, but sometimes with disasters, because they happen all across the country, and sometimes it's sort of seen as, putting money where it has the greatest impact, and some cities are quite large or cover big areas, and we're a small community. So when you have something that's very expensive potentially, like a lake tap solution, even if that's the best option, how do you sell that to Congress? How do you get the money for something like that when people might think, well, it affects maybe 3,000 people? Like, how do you make that happen with the price tag that's probably going to be pretty eye-popping?
Yeah, I mean, the law prescribes how we're to analyze that, and I mean, as a general matter, we're matching costs and benefits and justifying those items every single day. This is what we do, and I just want to make sure I separate. We have an emergency response function, and we have a long-term infrastructure function. And these two things are sort of merging here in Juneau. So a lot of what we can do is an emergency response. We can deliver, in the short and medium term, we can deliver a lot of relief using our emergency capabilities. In the long term, we have a process we go through with that, and that's why all of the analysis that we're doing to better understand and drive the uncertainty out of the longer term options that are on the table is really, a lot of that is around cost and schedule. That's part of that equation. Part of the driving uncertainty out is how do we do this in the most cost-effective way so that it is justified. And so that's all part of the analysis that's ongoing.
Nathan Espandula.
Since I'm just taking notes, thank you.
Thank you, Nathan. Mark Sabatini, Juneau Independent.
Okay. I was looking at the poster board referring to mining, and I had to do a quick scan of the text, so if I misstate anything, please correct me. But essentially, it seems to say that these mining companies, they say it's a good idea and that they have the technical know-how to do this kind of work. And I'm curious, how much consulting have you been doing with these companies, and how much weight did that carry? Especially since, as you've referenced, you're trying to carry out Trump administration stuff, and they've, expressed, mining is an important part of that agenda here in Alaska. So I'm curious how much influence their input had in this.
Well, we're taking advice from experts across the board. I mean, we are not just here in Juneau, but there are several other places in the United States where it's possible that tunnel technology could be the most cost-effective, best water conveyance option. It's not something that we have done at scale in the past, and that's why we're, independent of this particular concern here in Juneau, we are analyzing all options on the table about how to convey water underground. It can be better for real estate interests. It can be better for the environment, and it can deliver cost effectiveness in some places that surface level conveyance cannot deliver. And so we're taking advice from folks throughout the tunneling industry, and that could include the mining community that is very robust here in Juneau. But I don't think these are my poster boards, but we will take advice from anybody that we can.
That one had a date of March 20th, and so I was curious if this was, recent consultations you or anybody here has done, or if these have been ongoing talks over many, many months.
I've been focused on tunneling as a potential engineering solution for many communities since I got into this role.
Specifically with Helka and Kensington.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with that poster board, sorry.
Okay. Sir, I think that's all the time we have with respect to. I'll leave it to Honorable Tell. She's got one more question.
Okay, Anna, please.
Thank you so much. So I'm wondering, what are the main engineering challenges going into this year with the HESCO barriers? You said you're raising it a few inches.
Yeah,
are there any
Colonel Balzani said 1 to 2 feet.
Yeah.
Converted to inches, that's 12
sorry.
to 24.
Perfect. Yeah, great. Sorry, my bad. Yeah, what are the engineering challenges? Are there concerns for bridges, other infrastructure, and are you concerned at all about the integrity of the soil being able to hold more weight?
Thanks, Alex. So really, yes to all of that. That's why we've got some really great engineers analyzing what we can do, where we can do it, and how we should do it. And so I think you identify some of the complexities throughout the system, the strength of the soil, how high we can go. I think the key that we'll leave you with is we don't do anything without modeling and without our professional engineers evaluating what we're doing and how we're doing it. We don't want to make a problem worse. We only want to improve the system. And so sometimes that feels slow, but in this case, we're using those emergency authorities that we have. We're partnering with CBJ and their engineers, their understanding of the system and of the soil here to make sure that we've got the best solution for 2026, and then we'll continue to improve the system in coming years.
And I'll just add to that, I mean, because a lot of what you've heard here today is more analysis is going to be needed for short, medium, and long. And while that's true, our approach in the short and medium allows us to do the analysis while we have enough confidence in the short and medium term solutions that we're able to actually start doing things like getting pumps delivered now. Colonel Palazzini and team are already in the process of procuring the additional HESCOs. And so while there is analysis left around the details, we know enough now that in the short and medium term, we can start moving out, and that's what we're doing.
Sir, closing comments?
Thank you all for being here, asking tough questions and engaging with us. We're happy to provide transparency as much as we can to the public and appreciate the citizens of Juneau and Alaska at large. Very special place, and we're going to do everything we can to be part of the solution here.
Thank you to the Juneau Press here.